Darkest greetings, horror, sci-fi, and Robin Williams fans. Drew here from Horror, Sci-fi, and Beyond. And why did I mention the late, great comedy legend Robin Williams? Well, I'm glad you asked. Because today we're going to be reviewing a childhood classic of mine, and I'm sure a lot of you guys out there. And that movie would be Joe Johnston's Jumanji. And here to review this movie with us is the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Eric White.
Hello, everyone. I still think you're about to say Jackson's name every time you do that. So you should switch it up next time. I always anticipate it. Okay, appreciate that. Yeah. I'll take that. I'll take one of those. I'll take the myth.
But yeah, humble brag. And then my second guest is Mr. Action Jackson. How's it going, man?
Howdy, y'all.
So you're ready to talk some Jumanji?
Sure.
Jump into it.
And before we get to that, let's talk about, because since this is our first episode after the spooky October season, let's talk about some horror movies that we watched this year. And I'll start with you, Jackson. I know you like to watch a horror movie every day, but this movie,
I have for the past few years or past 2 years succeeded in the 31 Days of Horror challenge. I attempted it once years ago, and I got through like day 29, and then flaked out the last 2 days. But the last 2 years, I've done it. So I don't know. What do you want to hear about? I've got 31 movies on my list here.
Whatever were like the biggest highlights to you?
So my favorite one that I watched was a 1981 film called Possession.
Oh, yes.
With Sam Neill, and I can't remember the name of the female lead in it. But
yes.
Let me look it up, actually, because that's going to bother me if I don't say her name. Because she's great in the movie, but she wasn't somebody I recognized off the top of my head. But anyway, the movie is, hold on, Isabelle Adjani. That's her name. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now that we can move on from that. But it's an incredible movie. It is so dark and disturbing, and there are scenes in it like that you would never imagine you would ever see in a movie. I don't want to give too much away, but the basic story is about this couple that is going through a divorce, but like the sort of turmoil that they're going through on the inside starts to manifest itself in external ways. And it goes to some really, really weird places. But it's awesome. It's like a 10 out of 10 movie for me. I loved it.
It's wonderful. I agree with you. I saw it like 2 years ago for the first time. It had been like, you couldn't find it for a long time, like bootleg DVDs and whatnot. And they finally did, I think, a 4K restoration like last year, the year before, something like that. It's wonderful. It's a great like hidden classic that's just been like hiding out there waiting to be discovered again.
Yeah, and it's like beautifully shot.
Yeah.
Like the visuals are absolutely breathtaking.
Well,
and messed up.
That's like 1 and 2 for me. Jackson, Sam Neill, and beautifully shot, because that's one of my favorite aspects of movies. Music and cinematography. I love cinematography.
It's a wild ride.
This one,
just prepare yourself.
This one is it's really, really, really messed up.
Okay. But there's like a supernatural element to it, right?
Yes, there is.
Okay, I can do like messed up horror movies.
I mean, it may or may not be actually happening.
Uh,
It's one of those kind of movies where
well,
you don't know if this stuff is going on in their mind or if it's actually happening.
but there's a thing called the off button, and I can always use that.
I don't
The
know. I
what?
think once you start it, you gotta go.
Are there some more
Okay.
you want to talk about?
I watched Gerald's Game. That was probably the second
Mm.
favorite thing that I
Ooh,
watched.
that's a really good one.
Which like I've not been like the biggest Flanagan guy over the course of his career. I've liked some of his stuff and some of it I can just not my thing. But this one is definitely my favorite of his movies that I've seen. I still haven't seen a couple of them. I've never seen his Ouija board movie.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, but Gerald's Game is great. Carla Gugino absolutely should have been nominated for an Oscar for it. Her
Yeah,
performance is
I think
incredible.
it's the best performance in a Stephen King movie. Honestly,
It might be. It
yeah.
really well might be. It's a great character. One that I want to throw a little love towards, because the last few days of October was my best little stretch. It was like a 4-star movie every day. But one that
Shoot.
I sort of came across that I really really liked is one called Torn Hearts.
Never heard of it.
Okay.
It stars Katie Sagal.
Mm-hmm.
She was the mom on Married with Children, and she was
Mm-hmm.
on Lost, and and she was on Sons of Anarchy. That's probably what she's best known for at this point. But she plays this like sort of like former country music star who's become a recluse, and she lives in this big mansion and never comes out or sees anybody anymore. Well, these two like up and coming bandmates, two women, young women, they find out where she lives and they go to her house to try to get her to like come out of seclusion and record a song with them
Mm-hmm.
because she's like their favorite artist of all time. And so, but then it turns out that this woman has lost her mind and she starts playing these like really manipulative games with them.
Oh.
And it winds up being fairly bloody by the end.
Okay.
But it was cool. It's a Blumhouse movie. It's just cool to see a horror movie, suspense thriller with country music as a backdrop, because that's not something I feel like you ever see. So it was pretty original in that facet. So I just want to throw a little bit of love. I could go on and on. I'm sure y'all have movies you want to talk about too, though.
So yeah, if you're done with that, Jackson, I'll go to Eric. What are some horror movies that you watched in October?
I will say one that I definitely recommend is this Japanese movie from like late 90s, like 97, 98. I can't remember the exact date. It's called Cure, and it kind of kicked off that sort of like J horror. It's like really low key. It's not really like a horror movie, it's more like a thriller. With like definitely like horrific elements to it, but it's this basically there's this cop is on the trail of this like serial killer who's basically hypnotizing people into committing murders, and it's wonderful. It's wonderfully creepy and weird and great. I would recommend it if you've got, and it's like under 2 hours. It's like fast and fun, but not fun, but it's fast at least.
Yeah. So no American remake with Robert Smith from The Cure.
Not that I know of, although that would be a weird remake. I watched a lot of stuff that I'd seen before, so I don't really count that. But I did go see, and this was right at the tail end of October. So the original keyboardist, I guess, for Goblin, who wrote the music for some of those Dario Argento movies from the 70s, several other Italian horror movies. He's got a new band back together, the New Goblin, and they performed a live score for the movie Demons, which is not a great movie. But seeing it in that experience of like seeing it with a live score in front of everything, it was kind of wonderful. So yeah, that was probably the highlight musical movie experience that I've had in a minute. So it was cool. It was fun.
Yep. So I guess I'll go. Before I go, I did forget the two housekeeping things I want to do. The first thing is, I know you've been talking about this a lot, Jackson, but you finally got your podcast out with your mom.
I do, yeah.
Yep. And
we're three episodes in now. It's called Family with
Sweet.
Family.
Yep. And what is it about?
It's me and my mom reviewing like family films.
Mm-hmm.
So, we talk about Disney and we talk about, it's not all like kids movies. Like we did Sister Act. We haven't released that episode yet.
Oh, that's a good movie.
We did the movie Coda, which is like a PG-13 rated movie, but it's about a family. And I thought that would be a good one to talk about. We've had some guests on there. Reed and Nathan from The Fear of God have both been on it.
We're good friends.
Once we start season 2, I'm going to have both of these guys on it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. We've
already got them on the books.
Well, you, and both our moms are going to do Sound of Music because I've actually never sat down and watched that entire movie. Like I know the basic plot of it. I know like all the songs, but I've never actually sat down and watched it.
I think it's a wonderful movie. I love that movie.
I know it's really good. And then what are you reviewing with Eric?
I think we're doing The Sandlot.
Ooh, good one.
Yeah, I think that's what we have him on the books for. So that's a ways down the road.
L7.
Yeah.
Weenie.
Forever.
Yeah. Forever.
But yeah, episodes for that drop on Wednesdays on Apple. I don't have it on Spotify yet, just on Apple. But yeah, it's called Family with Family. And if you search that, I believe it's the first result that comes up.
And then the second bit of housekeeping that we have to mention is The Wrath of Michael Myers, my Halloween short film to promote my review of the David Gordon Green Triple Z, is now my most viewed video on YouTube.
Nice.
Which is crazy. And it keeps going up and up. And right now it's over 3,000 views, and I don't know why people like it so much.
I mean, it's a catchy little hook for a video. So yeah. I think people just enjoy like horror fan films and stuff like that.
100%.
So,
yeah, but no, I just want to say thanks to everybody for keep watching that video and keep sharing it. It really means a lot to me. And I think you were a big part of it, Eric, and my mom was a big part of it too. Like
Happy to help.
I think you're the two MVPs of the whole thing because I could have done it without you guys. And I promise you that my Scream fan film is going to be even better. Anyways, guys, let's talk about some more movies that I watched. Finally watched both escape room movies. They're really creative. And they both leave you on the cliffhanger. Especially the first one. I'm like, oh my god, what? Yeah, I don't know if you've seen those movies or not.
I saw the first one.
Yeah.
I didn't see the second one.
Yeah. Oh, and plus, Esther from Orphan is in the second one.
Oh, cool. I like her.
Yeah. Yeah, while I was watching it, I'm like, I know her from somewhere. I looked her up and I'm like, oh, it's Esther from Orphan. And then, and this is a sad one because this director just died. I watched William Friedkin's Bug with Ashley Judd, Michael Shannon, and Henry Connick Jr.
I saw it in theaters when it came out.
That's a weird one.
Yeah, this is a
never went back and revisited it. Yeah,
it's like a definition of a stock a while ago, like horror movie.
Yes,
you don't see anything. Eventually, Ashley Judd runs into this strange man played by Michael Shannon who thinks the military implanted him with bugs, and it's like it's a good commentary on like conspiracy theorists too.
I know.
That was Tracy Letts, isn't it? It's Tracy Letts, the playwright.
It is Tracy Letts, which is weird because when I think of Tracy Letts, I think of like him playing the dad in Lady Bird.
Oh yeah, Yeah.
And so I think of him as being such a warm screen presence, and he writes these really messed up plays.
Yeah,
Because he
right.
wrote
Right.
Killer Joe too, right?
He wrote Killer
And
Joe and
that's a really twisted movie.
yeah.
A couple other movies I watched. I watched The Faculty. Basically, it's a modern day evasion of the body snatchers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really fun
But
movie. Very 90s. It is very 90s.
Oh, it's super. I mean,
Yeah.
Kevin
100%
Williamson, he was like the hottest writer in Hollywood at
Yeah,
that
he was like
point.
the John Hughes of
Yeah.
his generation. But your movie is very 90s when the first song that you hear on it is The Offsprings, The Kids Are Alright. And then the last thing I want to talk about is The Birds, the Half Hitchcock.
Oh, okay.
Definitely, you can definitely tell it was a post-Psycho movie because it's a little bit more graphic than his most
Yeah, there's that one
Yeah.
shot of the guy with his eyes pecked out.
Eyes
And it is
scarred me
terrifying.
for yes. Yeah.
And I felt like the last act of the movie, it seriously for me felt like it was directed by Steven Spielberg. Like it had a very Spielbergian feel, and you can definitely tell that a lot of directors after Hitchcock was inspired by this movie, like Toby Hooper, with like the lack of
Sure.
sound or the lack of music where the sound is dominating in the scene.
Yeah.
Romero, a lot of horror guys. But anyways, guys, are there any more movies that you just thought of that you want to talk about?
I think that's the highlights for me.
Or if we're done talking about some horror movies that we watched in October, you ready to get to the Jumanji review?
Let's do it.
Yep, and then we'll do our top 5 Robin Williams movies, and we'll pay a little tribute to the man. Because actually, I didn't think about this so recently. Next year will be his 10-year anniversary since his death, of his
Has it
unfortunate.
been that long? Wow.
Yeah,
I feel like it's been that long.
That's crazy.
Let's talk about this fun kids movie first.
Yep.
Yeah.
And here is the plot summary for Jumanji. According to the Internet Movie Database, when 2 kids find and play a magical board game, they release a man trapped in it for decades, and a whole host of dangers that can only be stopped by finishing the game. I'll start with you, Eric. What is your overall thoughts about this movie?
This is the first time I've watched it in a long time. It's been at least probably 10 years. I saw this movie in theaters when I was a kid, so I was like 10 when it came out. And at the time, I loved it when I was a kid because it's just special effects and there's a lot of great special effects. It's got Robin Williams in it, so it's fun. Watching it as an adult, some of the things haven't aged quite as well. Mostly the visual effects are pretty spotty in some spots. And
I think the monkeys got worse.
The monkeys are the absolute worst.
Yeah, the lions
pretty
and
bad.
Some of the other animals were okay. The lion especially,
Yeah.
I think that was like a mix between CGI and
animatronic. Yeah, no, all the animatronic stuff, like the plants and the spiders are pretty shitty looking, but like the plants look great. Like that one plant that comes out of the, I don't know what is it, Cordenza that's there and like tries to bite the one kid.
I was just disappointed that the plant didn't go into show tunes.
Didn't sound like the guy from the Four Tops. Yeah.
Feed me, Seymour. Feed me all night long. So I love that movie.
That's a great one.
Those stuff's great. Yeah. I think it's fun for the most part. I didn't realize this until watching it this time, but there's like almost no story involved with this movie. It's just like a loose connection of events that kind of put them all together. Like, they're like the overarching thing is just to finish the game. So it's very video gamey, which is sort of kind of where the sequels play into it. Sequel reboots, requels, whatever you want to call them. It's fun. It's a little too dark for like little kids, so it's definitely like probably old for like older kids to watch. Robin Williams and honestly saves the movie for me on this rewatch. Like his congenial personality is really the most special effect in the entire movie.
What about you, Jackson? What are your thoughts about this movie?
Well, yeah, I think what year is this movie? Is it 94, 95?
95. Yeah.
95. So I would have been 12 when it came out, and I remember going to see it. And of course, I really enjoyed it as a kid. It's like 12 is the sweet spot for 10 to 12 is the sweet spot for enjoying this movie. Yeah, I have some of the same gripes about. I actually really like Joe Johnston as a director. I wish he made more movies. I don't know what happened to him. And of course, he came out of doing visual effects. That was how he started his career. But knowing that, seeing how some of the effects turned out in this movie, I'm just like,
yeah.
I don't know. I think you were reaching a little bit too far there.
Right.
But yeah, it's a movie that captures what he does really well, which is just like sort of, high adventure, kid friendly kind of stuff. I was actually, because he also made Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. This movie reminds me a lot of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids as far as the tone of it and everything, and some of the actual ideas of the movie. In fact, there's one joke that he just directly repeats from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and it's when they go to Bonnie Hunt's door, and he tells her like, who he is, and she just falls straight backward. They do the same thing in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids with like the neighbor mom.
Yep.
So I guess that's a gag that Joe Johnston really likes.
He loves that fainting women joke is Joe Johnston's go-to.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a fine movie. It's not one of my favorite Joe Johnston movies or one of my favorite Robin Williams movies for that matter. But it's a solid kids movie,
Yeah. That doesn't feel too kiddie. Like there isn't a lot of there's a lot of movies in the 90s that were very kind of cringy kiddie where they were making jokes that like kids would like, and there's like one or two jokes in here like that, but it
Blank Check is the perfect example of that.
Yeah. Doesn't really ever pander. It doesn't pander to its audience, which I appreciate.
Because I think that's what Joe Johnston does really well is he makes these sort of old-fashioned movies.
Yeah.
But he does it, he does it with a lot of conviction and heart.
Well, I feel like the whole bickering between Bonnie Hunt and Robin Williams, that's like more like the adult, or not adult humor where it's like nasty or dirty, but like more the humor that the adults could appreciate.
Right.
Sure.
And I love that whole element where like Kirsten Dunst is like, hey guys, we're about to roll. Thing. I guess we'll talk about that in a little bit. My quick is I freaking love this movie. Along with Men in Black and the Brendan Fraser Mummy and some other movies, like this is a childhood classic. To me, and it's funny that I mentioned Men in Black and the Mummy because those were both rides that me and Jackson rode at Universal Studios.
Yeah,
it was both 90s childhood classics of mine, which was awesome.
Yeah.
But I do love this movie. I will say the part where Alan, the younger version of Alan Paris, is sucked into the board game scared the crap out of me when I first watched it. I don't know why.
I remember being kind of wild by it as a kid. Yeah. And this time through, I was like, it's a little too bendy, but
Yeah. And I guess before we get to the deep dive of this movie, what are your quick thoughts about the sequel of sorts with The Rock and Kevin Hart and all of them?
I like the sequels. I think they're pretty good. I think they may be better versions of this Jumanji story. Because early on in this movie, I'm like, why don't they just stop playing? Like after the monkeys are loose and after they get Robin Williams, it's just like they could just stop. Like animal control can take care of these monkeys and that lion that's in their house. Like they could stop right now. Like they can't be. Yeah, of course they could just call somebody. I'm sure there's a local zoo there in wherever they are, Connecticut, New England, that would come and take that lion off their hands. Yeah, but like being trapped in the game with the new ones, I think is I don't know. I think they're fun. I think the new ones are a lot of fun, especially the first one.
I really do like the sequel. Surprisingly, I like that whole dynamic of like, it's enticing that metalhead kid. but he's like he ignores it because it's it's a board game, and you're like, who got time for board game? I'm gonna play my PS1. I'm gonna play Gran Turismo, and and then like the board game changes to the video game to entice them more. I'm like that's pretty cool. And then these other kids go into the video game, and then I like how like their avatar was different. Like the personality was different than the actual kids.
Right.
So like the nerdy kid is The Rock. The big muscle, jock kid is Kevin Hart.
Yeah.
The popular girl is Jack Black.
He
was the best
owns the movie. He owns the
Yes.
movie.
Well, no,
He's amazing at playing a teenage girl.
He has to be that teenage girl persona the whole movie.
Yeah.
Like everybody else is
fantastic.
But he has to be that part. And then the kind of side girl is the hot redhead, played by
Karen Gillan, yeah.
Yeah, I always like seeing her because I think she's a really good actress. And
yeah, it's a fun. I never saw the second of the reboot movies, but that one gets like Danny Glover and Danny DeVito or something.
Vito in it, yeah, and like Aquafina, yeah. It's like
yeah. I never saw that one. I wanted to, I just never got around to it. But yeah, I think that the first reboot movie is actually really, really good. Just because it seems like the whole cast is just having fun.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have anything too serious about it. Like the first Jumanji, and we'll talk about this as we go, like it definitely gets to some more serious kind of stuff.
Right.
But the reboots, they just like throw all that away. We're just gonna be silly.
Just silly fun. Yeah.
But now here's my question about this movie. So the movie opens up in 1869, where the two brothers are buried in the game. It's all creepy and all that stuff. And then it's not found again until 1969. And then later, like in like the 90s for the sequel. And it turns into So is Jumanji different in the 1800s versus the 1960s versus like the late 90s or something like that, or whatever that movie the sequel takes place in, like it changed based off of the person that finds it to entice them. Because I would imagine, because I don't know if the board game might be different in the 1800s. Maybe it might.
I think this movie doesn't do that. I don't think. I think this is the same game all the way through. But I mean, they did change it for. You're right, for like the Welcome to the Jungle movie.
Yeah, well, that's why I asked the question, because it obviously changed for that kid. So, like, would it be something different in each like time period based off of what was popular?
I mean, the movie doesn't give us any reason to believe that.
I'm saying based off of Welcome to the Jungle. That's what I'm saying.
Right, but when this movie came out, I don't think so.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, of course, because
and mainly because the box is always. I mean, actually, I guess we don't see it in the 1869 one, but
we just see
it's definitely the same It's definitely the same from the 60s to the 90s. So I don't think so. I don't know. Yeah. No, I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say no. Doesn't change.
Yeah, well, because I don't know what board games looked like in the 1800s. Like, I can believe that a board game like this would look like that in the 60s.
Here's what I kept thinking watching the movie. Who made that game?
True.
What kind of sick SOB made that game? Like that's so cruel to do that. Some really sadistic wizard.
Right. Well, that's all for came out. Let's write that movie and pitch it to
Jumanji Origins.
No, it'll just be Jumanji Origin of Jungle Evil.
It's like a straight horror movie.
Yeah.
Directed by Mike Flanagan. I'm kidding. You got enough. You got enough stuff going on, Mikey Flanagan. So yeah, do your thing. We'll make the Jumanji origin movie.
Yeah, that bothered me the whole movie when I was watching it. Just like, who made this thing? This is crazy.
Some sick bastard made this board game. Anyways, we're skipping ahead a little bit. Isn't that montage with the aunt getting the house ready to for it to be a bed and breakfast with like the different songs cutting in? Didn't that seem a little weird to you?
I had totally forgotten that was in the movie.
Yeah. I remember watching this time and I remember thinking that was an interesting choice for a montage. But also I was just like, okay. I wasn't mad at it. It was just like, it was just interesting because it is essentially just jumping forward in time and playing a new song as if it was like diegetic music in the scene for her that she's listening to while she's cleaning. I don't know. I was fine with it, but also I agree. I did notice it. And I was like, huh.
But the montage itself is fine, like the camera angles and like showing the past of time, that was fine. But like except for one song, Joe, this felt very Steven Spielberg where you kind of set things up throughout the movie. So like you have
I can see that.
So you have this little boy finding this bat in their attic. And so then the exterminator dude kind of explains kind of like the history of this house, like, oh, little Alice Paris disappeared. Some people say that his father killed him, and there could be
Which is
a million and one spots where the body could be.
Which is dark for a children's movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This kind of falls. I know I keep saying this is a fantasy movie, but this kind of falls under horror a little bit. It's kind of a horror.
Yeah, there are definitely some sequences like the spiders and
but I think that aspect is very Spielbergian, where like you set stuff up so early in the movie where it kind of pays off.
Sure.
Or like the way you kind of like explain things or plot exposition, that's more appropriate. I think that was.
I mean, it stands to reason that it's going to be Spielbergian. I mean, Joe Johnston came up working for George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and all those guys. So, yeah, it would stand to reason that they would have been big influences on him. In fact, a lot of his movies fall. The Rocketeer and October Sky and Hidalgo and all that. Those all feel sort of Spielbergian in a way.
It's true. And, like Spielberg was just in the lexicon as far as just like, that's who made family movies in the 80s and 90s. He was the most successful in doing it. So adventure serial movies.
I tell you what I like about this movie is just how put upon a character is Officer Carl.
Oh, poor Officer Carl.
That poor guy. For one thing, he like invented the modern sneaker and nobody ever knew it.
Right.
Because he got fired for something he didn't even do.
Sneakers way ahead of his time.
Yeah, exactly. He invented the modern sneaker. It looked like something that you would have bought in the 90s.
Yep.
No, the 80s too, but like they're like
the 80s. Yeah,
you just get like the 19 like 70s and the whole Chuck Taylor thing.
The man was a visionary.
And 26 years later, he just has the worst day ever.
Yep.
I love that subplot where his car keeps getting more and more destroyed.
Right. Well, no, it still happens to involve the guy that put your shoe on the conveyor belt to get destroyed.
Exactly. Yeah.
I forgot about that, Jack. That's pretty fucking hilarious.
Oh yeah. This curse on this town, This curse on Carl, Officer Carl.
Yeah, it's all coming down on him for some reason.
Right.
But David Alan Grier, he's very good at playing that sort of like comedy frustration. So yeah, I enjoyed that a lot. The other thing that really struck me about this movie this time through is it's got a really strong emotional core to it. All the stuff about like Alan and his dad is really, really like poignant. Especially, to find out, because, for one thing, from what I know about Robin Williams, his dad was kind of like that. He was this very like stern, like emotionally cold person.
Right.
Fortunately, in this movie, it doesn't play out that way.
Mm.
But just the idea that when Alan comes back and, you know, he's been stuck in the jungle for 26 years to find out that his dad actually really did love him. Like it's pretty powerful. Like I was sort of getting worked up a little bit watching it play out.
Which is nice because it's usually one of those things where it's like, oh, they're dead.
Right.
It's like the Back to the Future 2 thing where it's like he shows up at the gravestone and then back to our adventure sort of thing. We spent a nice chunk of the movie with him just trying to find his family again.
Yeah.
I do love that scene when he after Robin Williams fights the lion, and then he says, "Did any of you roll a 5 or an 8?" And he's like, and then Kirsten Dunst is like, "He did." And then Robin Williams just starts freaking out. He's like, "Ah!" Chasing the kid. And he's like, "Oh crap, scared you."
Yeah. He's been trapped in a jungle for 28 years. Been using banana leaves.
Yeah. Well, the whole part where he's like running around this town and you see that it's totally different, which is kind of like a Back to the Future Part 2 kind of.
Yeah.
Sure. And then he goes to his dad's suit factory, and he says to the kid, "My dad used to work, used to make suits here." And then he sees the homeless guy with the dog. I don't watch this movie as much as I used to nowadays, so I keep thinking that homeless man is the dad because it looks like him. But then, and then he goes to like the tombstone. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah. And then the dad shows back up later as the personification of the man trying to kill him. Yeah, which is a little weird thematically, but I think kind of works for the most part because he does end up standing up to him.
Because
it's sort of a spin-off of the way they have always done stage productions of Peter Pan. Because the guy that plays the father in that almost always also plays Captain Hook.
Okay, I was gonna say the Wizard of Oz because the same actor that played the mean old lady in the beginning of that movie, the French old Toto, is the Wicked Witch, and actually all the characters, like the Tin Man, Scarecrow, and the Carrie Lion.
But very specifically Peter Pan, because that's been like a tradition in theatrical productions of that show.
Right. Well,
that the parts of Mr. Darling and Captain Hook are played by the same actor.
Well, it's a reflection of bullying. That's one of the themes. We'll get to that when we get to themes of this movie. But yeah, no, it's about sticking up to bullies, and Robin Williams kind of become the bully to Peter in this movie a little bit.
Yeah, but I mean, does it get a little muddy then that so he loves his dad. He finds out that his dad isn't a bully, but then the person playing the bully in his adult life is his dad. I don't know. Like, there's something in there that kind of rubs against one another the wrong way. I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
I think it's just him just working through his stuff, you know? The other thing I like about the Van Pelt storyline, it's just a line, but I find it really funny, is Sarah asks Alan's like, "Why is he hunting you?" He's like, "I don't know. Everything about me he finds offensive."
Yeah, I mean, the fact that I got to play like an old Irish lady in Mrs. Doubtfire, he finds offensive.
Hates it.
Yeah. Yeah, this guy's a complete transphobe. I love the gun store scene where it's
that's so funny.
Yeah.
I just find it funny that it's like this really geeky guy, and he like runs a gun store. He's like, "I made these since 1916." But one thing I do want to talk about this movie is I love the creature reveals, especially like the lion when like the tail goes over the keyboards like that. That's like classic.
Yeah, I know, and him like coming out of the shadows is genuinely pretty creepy until you kind of get a full look at him and then you're like, that's an animatronic. But I prefer the animatronics to a lot of some of the CGI stuff in this.
I thought the CGI the lion looked really good.
It looked pretty good.
Yeah, the lion is one of the better looking creatures in the movie. The elephants and rhinos are pretty solid.
Yeah. The stampede sequence.
Stupid. It's just those awful monkeys because their faces are straight out of the Uncanny Valley.
Yeah, it does not.
I do
does not work.
I do love the stampede scene. That the way that they set that up with him and Bonnie Hunt arguing.
Hmm.
And like Kirsten Dunst's like, hey, we're gonna play again, and then she rolls, and then like they're in truck to stake, and then um Robin Williams goes up to the bookcase and he's like, run! It's a stampede! And then just like
Oh,
running.
he forgets the game. Like he's about to run away, and then he has
Yeah,
to go back
Yeah.
and get the game. Yeah.
yeah. I think like as a kid, because obviously
Hmm.
when you watch these childhood classic movies, especially one of quality like this, when you're older, there's like different layers, and like the
Mm.
whole father son layer, I kind of always stick with me as an adult. But that's one part that always sticks with me in this movie, the stampede scene, like the
Oh,
whole
sure.
that I just and that and him getting stuck in the board game, like I said, with like I said,
Yeah.
crap out of me.
Hmm.
I really like the crocodile scene.
Oh yeah,
I'd forgotten all
Crocodile
about
scene
the
is
crocodile
solid.
scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's an actual like practical effect. And
Hmm.
it works really, really well.
There
So,
apparently was somebody inside that crocodile suit, like operating him, like
oh
inside of it.
yeah,
As
that's
yeah. I
cool.
read about it. Yeah, it's wild. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
but that whole
I like
set piece is really, really strong. Where it's raining inside the house
The
and
monsoon. Yeah.
everything starts to flood. And yeah,
yeah.
No, and it's a nice way to like that they start connecting all their like loose stories. So like the caregiver, she's not really their mom, I
she's
guess
their
their
aunt.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and then the police officer,
the cop.
Carl, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and so everything starts connecting back together around that time.
Uh
It's good.
huh.
It's a nice it's a nice like moment towards the end of the movie where everything
Hmm.
starts piecing together, set up for their final conclusion.
Yeah, and you got James Horner doing the score. With I kept thinking it was Danny Elfman.
Oh.
It
Hmm.
sounded very Danny Elfman.
I did have a thought about midway through this movie that what if instead of Joe Johnston directing, what if Joe Dante had directed it? If it would be
Hmm,
far more silly and more terrifying, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
that'd be an interesting one.
Because it's like
Yeah.
he did
It
Gremlins,
fits his
so
sensibility. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
didn't, that's all I got. That's all I have to add. Anything other than that. But the early stuff on, like especially like the more creepy things,
hmm,
I think really like leaned a little less into like Joe Johnston's sort of like idealized like look back and a little more into like Joe Dante sort of like
Hmm.
creepiness. But I don't know.
So before we get to the theme and favorite part, least favorite part, have either of you read the book that this is based upon?
Long
No,
time
I've
ago
never
as a
read
child.
any of that guy's books because he did a lot of like kids picture books and stuff.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I read Thora. My aunt Lynette bought me that book for Christmas a
Didn't
while
he
ago.
do the Polar Express as
Oh yeah,
well?
yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
You want to get the thematic elements of this movie?
Sure.
So Jackson, what is a theme that you notice in this movie?
Well, I mean, we kind of already talked about it. The sort of like um, parents and children sort of learning to understand each other and understand what
Hmm.
they mean to each other. Um, I don't know that I have that much more to say about it. I mean, it's a very common theme in children's films and one that I personally resonate a lot with. But yeah, just like I mean, the scene, and we sort of talked about it earlier, is when he goes to talk to the homeless man living in the shoe factory, like, and he finds out what happened to his dad after he went missing all those years ago.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden, he has this whole new perspective on his dad that he never had before.
Yeah.
It's just really beautiful. I just really enjoy that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think all and I think it really works. Those scenes in particular really work because of Robin Williams and
Mhm.
sort of the congenial
Yes.
nature of him and everything.
Hmm.
And the storytelling, and honestly, in those, that stuff is more strong than any of the rest of the movie, which is just sort of like out of the fire into the firing pan, out of the frying pan into the fire, like over and over and over
Yeah.
and over, sort
Hmm.
of thing. And they don't really revisit it until like the very end when we finally reveal like, oh, it's one of those it was all a dream. Although it feels a little more satisfying since they like conquer it. It is an active thing.
Right.
But it's a nice little moment at the end too. With um with the kid and his dad when he finally like makes up to him. It's nice. It's some good stuff.
Yeah, I do like the part where he's at the grave or the tombstone of his parents, Robin Williams, and then Peter comes up to him and he tells we lost our parents too, and Robin Williams said to him, and I bet you really miss them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that part really like that part gave me goosebumps when I watched it the other night. Yeah, on it's got to me, and it made me think about Robin Williams as well.
Yeah,
I know he's missed by billions of people out there.
Well, that's the other thing about Robin Williams as an actor, and we'll talk about this as we discuss our favorite movies of his. Is even though he's known for comedy, like there's always this very strong melancholy streak running through his films, and obviously we know now that he was a very sort of troubled man that dealt with a lot of mental health issues and stuff like that.
Do you see him in movies like like Mrs. Doubtfire or Good Morning Vietnam or some of his stand-up stuff?
Yeah,
and he's like he's on it with the comedy. But and then you just look at his eyes, like there's just a sadness to him.
Yeah, I mean, Mrs. Doubtfire, that is like one of the saddest movies you'll ever see. It's hilarious, but it is so deeply, deeply sad. And he brings that same quality to this movie. And I think the movie's all the better for it. Yeah.
Yeah. If it had been a different person in it, I don't know if this would be a movie that we would think about as fondly. Like if it would have been.
I will say one thing that I noticed was kind of the passage of time.
Yeah.
Obviously, he got sucked into a board game and went to an evil jungle. But like sometimes, like when you're away from like your hometown, or you haven't seen like a childhood friend for a while, it's kind of weird going back to that hometown or seeing that childhood friend again.
Yeah, because it's not the same place as you left it,
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It may be mostly the same. Sometimes places don't change as much, but almost always, if you spend an extended time away from some place where like you grew up or whatever, when you go back, it is not the same place.
Yeah, like my high school
I've had that experience many times.
Right. Well, my high school best friend, Quentin, we used to hang out quite a bit and talk a lot. But now, that we're older and we're doing our own things, it's kind of weird to see him grow up, and he's gonna be a dad now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations to Quentin.
Yeah. Sounding you out, man. But it's just weird, like to go back to Jacksonville, Florida, which is my hometown. And, see my people I used to like go to church with, and it's kind of weird because like all this time has passed, and like everybody has like kids now on their they have like these careers, and they have their own homes, and they're married, and it's really weird.
Yeah, no, I mean you're basically a time traveler in some ways, but you're getting to live out your life elsewhere, and then going back to these places that are sort of fixed in time, fixed to a certain like memory in time. Like, they're not the same. They'll never be the same.
Anyways, guys, is there anything else you want to add as far as thematic stuff goes?
I don't think so. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward movie.
Yeah.
Like, it's not super deep, but it's also designed so that anyone can understand it, which is great for like kids watching and everything.
So Jackson, what is your favorite part and least favorite part of this movie?
I mean, well, my favorite part is all the stuff surrounding Alan and his dad. That's definitely my favorite. If I have to pick like just a fun part, it's probably just watching that cop's car get destroyed slowly over the course of the movie.
Car, you destroyed my car.
And then at the end, when it's like Divine comes out and starts pulling the car back into the woods, he's like, "Fine, you can have it."
Oh, least favorite part.
Oh, the monkeys. The thing is like the bits they do with the monkeys are really good. I just wish
Mhm.
the monkeys looked good
Yeah.
because I enjoy the sort of comedy beats of the monkeys, them riding the motorcycle and driving stealing the car, everything. But
Well, the
they just
monkeys,
look so awful.
the monkeys were very reminiscent of Gremlins.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. That's what made me
they
think
act
of
like
Joe Dante.
gremlins.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
like
makes
they
sense.
don't like they don't necessarily want to hurt people. I mean, if they do, they just have a good
Yeah.
time. That's like
They're
one of
just mischievous, yeah.
yeah. What about you, Eric? What is your favorite part and your least favorite part?
My favorite part is, in honesty, Robin Williams. To me, like I think I said at the beginning, but he's the part of the movie that really works for me. Like the stuff Jackson was
Mhm.
talking about, well, with stuff with his dad, but then the stuff he has later in the movie where he finally like um to the emotional moment of the core of him like learning and growing as a person is like when the little monkey boy like has talked to him and he yells at him at first, but then he realizes, oh, I'm become my
Mhm.
dad, even though I didn't want to be. I don't know. Rob Wins is my favorite part of the whole movie.
Yeah.
Better than some of the dodgy special effects. And least favorite part, I sort of that there isn't really a plot, and that Alan is really the only person that gets any sort of like character growth in the
Right.
movie. Um, like we set up that the kid's parents are dead, but like they don't really do
I kind
anything
of
with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Other than just them being relatable. But and I guess the same thing with Bonnie Hunt too. I mean, well, she gets a little more of an arc than they do, and really they're our
Yeah.
two leads, so I guess that makes the most sense. But I don't know. I feel like that it's a little thinly plotted. Is my biggest complaint.
Let's do my favorite part and least favorite part. My favorite part, already said it, Alan coming home. I just think that's such a beautiful, heartwarming moment. It gets me here
Hmm.
Hmm.
every time, man. My least favorite part, I like how Alan is being comforting to Peter in the beginning of the relationship. It takes a weird turn, and
It
I
does.
where it gets kind of creepy, and then he gets kind of authoritative, and that came out of nowhere. And Robin Williams is
Yeah.
great with that. I see where they're coming from, where he reflecting his father, but he kind of becomes a jerk a little bit.
Yeah.
Been
With
trapped in a video. He's been trapped in a jungle for 28 years.
yeah, maybe just going through the motions. I don't know because of that.
I feel like the scene kind of plays like they needed a beat there, where something
Right.
happens, and it had to be that. You know.
Yeah, it was just weird. Well, I love that whole monologue that he gives to Peter when he says, "I used to think that crawl in the
Yeah.
Hmm.
in the darkest jungles," and he's
Hmm.
trying to scare him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that whole thing. Let's do rating. Where
Hmm.
would you rate this movie, Eric?
I think it's a solid like 3.5 stars.
Okay.
As long as you can get over some dodgy CGI from the 90s, you'll have a fun time, and then you may not think about it ever again, especially if you don't have any nostalgia attached to it.
Yeah.
Jackson.
Yeah, like three and a half.
Okay. Um,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go one up. I'm gonna say four because I do have this
Okay.
fault for this movie. I
Okay,
there's some problems, but it's a good movie.
it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's enjoyable.
All right, guys. So you ready to get to the Robin Williams tribute?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I want to start this off. Kind of like how you discovered Robin Williams. Maybe some favorite moments throughout your life.
I honestly don't know like how I discovered Robin Williams.
Mm,
I
Yeah.
don't know like what would have been the first thing I saw him in. Because I know when Aladdin came out, I already knew who he was. And that movie
Hmm.
came out when I was 9. But I already knew who he was, but I don't know like what the first thing I would have seen him in was. It's really
Hmm.
weird. Like it's almost like I always knew who he was.
yeah.
I might
Yeah.
have seen like Mork and Mindy reruns,
Had to
like on
been
Nick at
Mork and
Night
Mindy.
when I was a kid
Yeah.
or something like that. But yeah, I couldn't really tell you for sure what like how I discovered him.
Yeah, it was
I
probably Aladdin for me, honestly. And then he kept popping up in other stuff. I remember watching an episode of Mork and Mindy when I was like really, really little. My mom telling me,
mm,
like, "Oh yeah, you know Genie from Aladdin? That's the guy that voiced him."
mm. I did see Good Morning Vietnam really young because my grandfather had it on VHS and he would let us watch whatever. So I did watch that movie when I was like really probably too young to watch it. But um, hmm, yeah, I don't know. I guess it would have to be more comedy reruns. I can't really think of anything else
Right.
that I would have seen him in.
Yeah. Do you have any special memories with Robin Williams, like watching his movies or like some of his stand-ups or anything like that?
I mean, just kind of like growing up with him, like especially through the
Yeah,
90s, because it was just like all these movies that were sort of geared towards kids for the most part. Like
yeah, he made a lot of those.
even the more like darker ones. But he was the only person. He's the only actor I can think of really that can oscillate between those like two extremes too, where he could do
Hmm.
something like The Fisher King and then like a year later do Mrs. Doubtfire. You know what I mean? Like it's
Right.
uh I think it just goes to his talent of being like a good performer, which probably
Yeah.
comes from his days of doing stand up and reading crowds and reading the room on it sort of thing. So yeah, watched all of his movies throughout the
Yeah,
90s.
he's
So
definitely the type of comedian who can play for both crowds. Like he can do like the super raunchy stuff and stand
mm-hmm,
up and be freaking hilarious, but he can do
mm-hmm,
more like family friendly stuff and still be freaking hilarious
mm-hmm.
all the same. Um,
Yeah.
I was pretty shocked to discover how raunchy he was because I remember like my two favorite comedians growing up was Robin Williams and Jim Carrey because they were both just real life
Mm-hmm.
cartoon characters.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And my mom would not let me watch a lot of Robin Williams stuff because his stuff is real bad.
Oh yeah, no, that 80s stuff. I remember seeing like in the 90s, I remember seeing like a comedy special, the one that he did on HBO, and I was just like, oh, it's Robin Williams. It's my favorite star of Mrs. Doubtfire and Aladdin. And I put it on and wasn't really prepared for it.
But I love his stand up stuff. Like he has just so much energy for a guy that was apparently like really depressed and really troubled. Like the fact that he can just come up with so much energy.
Well, I mean, they
I
do
mean,
say
it's
that, you know,
very common among comedians.
Mhm.
You know,
But
that's
like,
why they make people laugh, is this to
mm,
help them deal with their own sort of inner turmoil and darkness.
sure.
Uh,
And it's also people, it's a general rule that people who end up in with suicidal thoughts and all that sort of stuff are masking it in some ways for the outside world because they
right.
don't want them to see what problems that they have, sort of thing. So,
Hmm.
yeah, but this kind of
mm,
seemed like he had like just like that extra amount of energy compared to like Jim Carrey and like Eddie Murphy and like George
Hmm.
Carlin and all those other guys. He just had energy for days.
Apparently, he was also just a really fun person to work with
Mm.
because, like, he'd be on a movie set and in between takes, he would just start doing like, you know, freestyle comedy to keep everybody entertained while they were setting the camera
Right.
up in another spot or whatever.
Yeah, I heard
hmm
So,
like when he worked with Henry Winkler on with like Happy Days and like because
hmm.
that I think that's where the Mork character came from.
yeah, there's a crossover episode or something like that.
And he said like
Well, Mork first was a character on Happy Days. And
Was
then
he?
Mork and Mindy was a
Oh,
spinoff of Happy Days.
yeah, 'cause I think it was Gary Marshall's son that suggested that there'd be an alien on Happy Days.
Yeah. That show that show was
what a
weird.
wild show. Yeah.
Yeah, but basically Henry Winkler said that like when you hugged Robin Williams, like you just felt like a warmth about him.
Mhm.
And he was just such
I believe that.
just such a warming, calming, comforting presence. And then
Mhm.
he would open up his mind in his mouth, and he'd just be the funniest thing.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think, like I think I never watched a whole lot of Mork and Mindy. I just seen like clips of it. But there's a
Hmm.
BS documentary that came out like right after he died or right before he died.
Hmm.
Uh, or they filmed it before he died, and then it came out like right after he died.
Hmm.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But we were talking about how they brought in Jonathan Winters onto the show.
Yeah.
And like
Mm.
the comedy improv got so bad and so crazy that like they ran out of film.
I
Because
can
Sounds
believe
wonderful.
it. Yeah.
it was going for like a good hour, and they ran out of film. That's just how genius like Robin Williams was, and he was at like a 10 or like a 10 without Jonathan Winters, but when he was with Jonathan Winters, he was at 100 million
Yeah.
infinity whatever. Like he was just crazy.
Yeah.
But you're gonna be missed, Mr. Williams. Like you're definitely my comedic hero for sure. Like that, you're the reason why I do voices and I do like my celebrity voices like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Christopher Walken and all of them because
Mm.
you know you did voices and you know on Aladdin and then you stand up in some of your other movies and um you know you made it cool to be a little weird and a little goofy.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Are there
for
any
sure.
things you want to say before we get to our top five?
No, I'm ready to do the top 5.
Okay.
I think we'll have plenty to say about those.
Yeah.
Well, you, Eric, did you want to say anything just real quick before we?
um, it's always hard losing somebody who's super talented and congenial and all that sort of stuff. So the wonderful part about being a performer or making movies or music or anything like that is you can always go back and revisit these things, and they can
Hmm.
always be relived and bring new special memories to when you share it with other people. So that's the
Hmm.
gift that Rob Williams continues to give.
Yeah, for sure. So let's go, Jackson. What is your number five best
Number
John Williams,
5.
Robin Williams movie?
Number 5. This is the one that I said might throw you for a loop a little bit, but I really love the movie Bicentennial
Mmm.
Man.
Huh.
I know this movie's reputation, and yes, I know it's sappy.
Hmm.
It's like the most saccharine thing in the whole world, but I just really, really like it. I think he's really good in it. Maybe it's a little bit too long, but I enjoy that about it. It's just kind of a nice movie that's easy to sit in and watch the passage of time. And you know, of course, he isn't aging, but everybody's aging around him, and he's just like going through this 200-year lifespan. And I think it's a really lovely film, and I think people are a little bit too hard on it.
What about you, Eric? What is your number five?
This one's also a kind of controversial choice. I would say controversial. It's just not a movie that people think of or really associate that they like it with Robin Williams, but it's a darker movie than a lot of people. It's darkly funny. I'll say that. Did you ever see Death to Smoochie, the Danny DeVito
Yes,
movie? I
I
love
really
it.
like that one.
I love it. It's great. It's a great like satire of like children's television and just like entertainment in general. And Rob Williams is wonderful as this unhinged, completely unhinged, just children's performer who like Edward Norton is almost oblivious to. I love it. I think it's wonderful, and it's a great like Bicentennial Man. I rewatched it. I rewatched that Smoochie I think during the pandemic, and it was one of those movies that I remember liking when it came out. I remember thinking like it's weird and offbeat, and for the most part holds up pretty well.
Yeah, I need to watch that. There a lot of his more obscure ones like that or like Bicentennial Man I haven't really watched.
Hmm.
And I need to go
Mm.
back and watch that.
He went on this
Give it a shot.
tear from like 2002, 2003, where he was making all these really dark movies, and that was one of them.
Hmm.
Because that and 1 Hour Photo and
Yeah.
Insomnia,
Yep.
and there was something else that
Final
came out
Cut.
right around.
There was the Final
Yeah,
Cut
Final
around that time.
Cut. Yeah, he was doing all these kind of like really, really dark movies, but I enjoyed that phase of his career.
It
Death
was
to
fun.
Smoochie is a lot of fun. I haven't watched it in a long, long time though.
Yeah.
But I remember really liking him in it, and I really like Edward Norton in that movie.
Yep. It's good.
One of his
Both
better
of them,
performances as well.
they're both great. Yeah.
Yeah,
I like Edward Norton in comedies. I don't know why he doesn't do more of them.
he's really funny. Yeah.
But my number five would be Mrs. Doubtfire.
Solid
All
choice.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, solid.
I'm gonna do a lot more obvious ones because that, like I said, I'm missing a lot of more obscure kind of
Mm-hmm.
weird ones like a Death Smoothie. I need to, I really do. But yeah, no, I just like this movie. I just relate to it being somebody that's a child of divorce. It's just, I don't know, something about it. It's just his little monologue at the end. Always
Yeah.
gets me when I hear it. But he's just so funny. Like the part where he's trying to
Yeah.
he's trying to go to between the two different characters.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Always funny. Him popping
He
out.
forgets which one he is.
Mm-hmm.
The part when he pops out behind the refrigerator, that's like classic right there. Yeah, it's a funny movie, man. I just love this movie. Jackson, what is your number 4?
Number 4, I'm gonna go with a dark one, a really dark one. It's World's Greatest Dad.
Ooh, that's a good one. I have seen.
It's so good, but man, it is a real bummer of a movie.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. But he's
But
really good in it. He's really good at
so
it.
good. It's such a great performance. It's just a really good, like, well written, well directed film. I don't know why Bobcat Goldthwait hasn't made other good movies.
Yeah. Well,
It seems like he had this one really, really great one in him.
Yep.
And yeah.
Kind of like a different side of a Robin Williams comedy. Because we
Oh
always
yeah.
memes like Mrs. Doubtfire, Good Morning Vietnam, like that kind of like
Yeah.
doing all these voices.
Except in this one, he's like legitimately playing like a bad guy.
Yeah.
It's not the worst character he's ever played. We'll get to one of those here in a little bit. But yeah, it's really it's a hard movie to watch too.
Yeah.
It's so uncomfortable.
What I was gonna say was like his comedy in this is more kind of straight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot more like situational sort of like comedy in some ways, like where he's like getting into these situations, like he keeps getting it over his head until the very end.
But yeah, what is your number 4, Eric White?
World's Greatest Dad. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. We've already talked about it. I love World's Greatest Dad. It's so wonderfully dark and weird, and the end is so like amazingly hopeful too. It's a wild ride.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about putting this in here, but this movie, it doesn't affect me as much as some of these other movies. Like I don't have as personal of a connection with it, but it's definitely a high honorable mention. Maybe like my number 6 or 7. It's also a movie I don't want to go back to a whole lot because of that one kind of
it's not a lot of fun.
Really dark.
But my number 4 is gonna be Good Morning Vietnam.
Nice.
If you just want to show somebody who's not familiar with Robin Williams, like his comedic ability, this is the movie you show people, or not even just the whole movie, but just like that clip, that montage of him doing the radio thing.
Yeah.
Like, but that's why I kept watching that over and over again, like shortly after he died, and I just laughed my ass off. And it's a really kind of enticing movie about, and he actually kind of did this in real life later in his life, but somebody who's coming into a war zone in a very dark time and giving people joy.
Except for that one lieutenant who's just the worst.
I love the part. I love the part in this movie where like the one lieutenant. I think it might be the same one you're talking about, but
the one that's just a real dickhole. Yeah.
yeah. He would just won't let him do any of his comedy, and he tells them, "You're in desperate need of a blowjob." What about you, Jackson? What is your number 3?
My number 3 is The Fisher King, which it's been a while since I've seen it. But I have a pretty strong, I don't necessarily remember everything about the story, but I have a very strong memory of like the visuals and the tone of it. And I just really love it. It's probably my favorite Terry Gilliam movie as well. I don't know. Baron Munchausen's really good.
Oh, that's very good.
Which he's also in Barry Munchausen.
He is.
Yeah.
But he's not as central in that,
True.
he's not really the star of that movie. But yeah, the Fisher King is just this very, what's the word? It's elegiac.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's very strong melancholy, and he still gets to be funny a little bit in it. But I don't know. I just really dig watching sad Robin Williams.
That Rob Williams is always a fun
And
time, especially this movie is very zany in some ways, and like just how
yeah,
it's shot like like with all these like super wide angles, which is what Terry Gilliam loves to shoot with,
it's a Terry Gilliam thing.
but it makes it like a crazy cartoon, but it's dealing with all this like tragedy and loss and people overcoming like
Yeah,
this. Yeah, it's so sad and wonderful. But
yeah.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
And Jeff Bridges, of course, is also
it's great.
those two play off each other so well, even though they have such different energies
Hmm.
as actors. So I need to go watch it again.
What is your number 3, Eric?
Well, it's not my number 3, but I'm gonna go ahead and jump to it. And it was The Fisher King. So we've already crossed that bridge as well. Again, we talked about it. It's wonderfully melancholy, and Robin Williams is unhinged in the best possible ways. But it's good. It's really good. If you haven't seen it, go see it.
Yeah. My number 3 is Good Will Hunting.
Okay.
The movie that finally got him to win that damn Oscar.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's not deserving because he's so good in this movie.
This is where he's like fully like dipped his toes into like nothing but melancholy. He's been doing it for like a decade now, and he's just like. But I think I don't know if this is true or not, but I do. Supposedly, he improv that scene where he talks about his farting wife,
I think he did.
which makes Matt.
I can
Yeah,
believe
I think
it.
so.
I can
Yeah.
believe it. Yeah.
Um,
That was probably my favorite of his movies when I was in like college.
mhm.
I used to watch it all the time. And actually a few years ago, I was in Boston with my parents, and I made my parents help me track down the park bench where he gives that monologue. And I made my mom take a picture of me and my dad sitting with at the same angle as Matt Damon and Robin Williams.
Right.
Love it.
Well, the thing I love about that scene is how Gus Van Sant doesn't cut back, or he hardly ever cuts back to Matt Damon's reaction. It's just Robin Williams just giving, and he does that the same. He did the kind of the same thing in the "It's Not Your Fault" thing. Like he didn't cut back to anything else. He just left the camera stay there and let Matt Damon and Robin Williams do their thing. And that whole monologue that "It's Not Your Fault," that really gets to me a lot.
It's very powerful stuff. He's fantastic in that movie.
Yeah, because he's at his lowest low, like, because he's trying to figure out what he wants to do with his life, and he broke up with Skylar. And another really powerful scene is when he finally leaves Boston to hopefully be with Skylar again, and the fact that you don't even know if they're gonna get together again.
Yeah.
Well, because that's what life is. It's all about mystery. You don't know what life is gonna throw at you. But anyways, Jackson, what is your number 2?
Number 2 is Dead Poets Society. It's this sort of unimpeachable masterpiece. Like, I mean, I love a teacher movie. I even like the bad ones. I like stuff like The Emperor's Club and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is kind of like the ultimate one of that sort of genre. I mean, there have been a lot of good movies in that sort of subgenre, but this is the gold standard for all of them. I mean, he gets to do sort of his bits a little bit, during his lecture scenes, but it's also got that very soulful quality to it. I love all the young cat. I mean, Ethan Hawke is to this day one of my favorite actors. And then you got what's his name that plays the dad, who's just awful in the movie, but He's really good. What's his name? Shoot, he's in RoboCop, and he was on that
Mm.
70s show. Why can't I think of his name?
Oh,
Anyway,
Kurtzman. Kurt
Kurtwood Smith.
Whitsmith, yeah.
Yeah, and he's really good at playing just a really mean dad. But yeah, it's just, and it's one of those movies, like, it really does, like, it makes you want to go and read poetry.
Eric, what is your number 2?
It's Dead Poet Society. I don't know
We
what to
have the
say.
same list. Eric and I have all the same movies.
It's everything Jackson said. It's wonderful, inspiring. It sort of like set the precedent for what Robin Williams did throughout the 90s, basically. Like, he started with this movie, and he basically sort of like did this sort of role off and on for the next decade or so.
Yeah.
And this is probably the penultimate of it. It's the best version of that character, sort of thing. And it's great. It holds up. And honestly, it's one of those movies that gets better over time. You can watch it now, you can watch it 10 years from now, and then you would pull new things from it you didn't see before. I watched it when I was a kid and I liked it, but I didn't like it didn't resonate the way it did the last time I watched it, which was a few years ago, but it was just like, oh, good. It's really good. It's great.
My number 2 is gonna be the more unusual one on this list, and that's gonna be 1 Hour Photo.
Nice.
Yeah, and I got a story about this. I remember, when Blockbuster was still a thing. I remember my mom rented this movie, and I rented whatever kids movie or video game that I rented. And I asked my mom, what movie did you rent? And she said, 1 Hour Photo with Robin Williams, and it's not a comedy. I always thought comedians only did comedies, and I didn't realize that a comedian can do like serious movies. I watched this movie the year after he died, and I was transfixed by it.
Yeah.
I did think this is such an interesting movie about a man that people will think is happy and has a good life, but really he has a really tragic backstory, and you just don't know, if the overly nice like cashier at like Walmart or Target, you don't know what they're going through, and the man is using their niceness to mask a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And I just love the whole idea of like photos being like frozen memories in time. And he says in the beginning that like, you always like take pictures of like your best moments. It kind of turns because the woman that that always comes into the store that he had a fixation on, you find out that her husband cheated, or he's cheating on her. Pictures, like they took pictures of that, of them having the affair, and it's kind of an interesting juxtaposition there. But no, yeah, it's a cool movie. If you like kind of like thriller kind of movies, check it out. It's really good. But what is your number 1? Jackson.
Number 1.
I know
it's probably not going to be a surprise to people that have watched me on this channel before, but it's Christopher Nolan's Insomnia.
Yeah.
This is one of the most like well scripted, well shot, interesting murder like thrillers I've ever seen. I'm not super into like a detective story. Sometimes I really enjoy them, but this one just floors me, and it gets better every time I see it. Just the sort of back and forth between Al Pacino's and Robin Williams' characters in this is some of the best like back and forth dialogue I've ever heard in any sort of like crime movie. And it's probably the most despicable character that Robin Williams has ever played. And he's played a few. I don't know, 1 Hour Photo gives it a run for its money, I guess.
But he's a good person. Like he's doing this he did it for a good reason. I don't remember his motivation.
He's still doing some pretty shady stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, in this movie, like, and well, the other thing is there is a sort of sympathetic streak to him in Insomnia as well, because you get the feeling he didn't mean to commit this murder. He's just trying to get away with it. But I don't know. It's such a layered character. I feel like him and Al Pacino both.
Hmm.
And I kind of wish Christopher Nolan would do something like this again. You know, like a more low budget. He's definitely gone the way of, huge movies,
Mm,
and
Yeah.
I enjoy those too. But I would like to see him do something like this or Memento
yeah.
again one of these
Prestige, yeah,
days.
something like that.
The
Yeah.
Prestige, yes, that's one of my
Yeah,
favorites.
that's a good one. That's like a favorite Nolan. If you watch our top five list. Um, I do want to see Nolan do something more like this, but more of like a horror edge to it, more like a Seven kind of thing, something like really scary.
I'd be down for that. Yeah.
So, Eric, Mr. White,
Hmm.
Mr. Anderson. Sorry, that's my terrible Hugo Weaving impression. I know where that came
Right.
from. Eric, what is your number?
Uh-huh. Well, this is technically not my number one, but like because Jackson and I's lined up so well, I didn't want to like him to talk about us to talk about Dead Poet Society, and then I go like five later and go like, I like Dead Poet Society. I can't say anything now, or World's Greatest Dad, or Fisher King. So this was
Yeah.
way further down the list, but I went ahead and jumped forward on it. But this is also a bit of a controversial choice. But I really love Popeye, the Robert Altman movie from like 1980.
I can dig that.
I don't
Yeah.
know. The production design is wonderful. He's great as
Yeah.
Popeye. It's a perfect representation of like the cartoon.
Uh-huh.
It gives Rob Williams full range to play with uh his physicality, which he doesn't get a lot to doesn't get to do that a lot in the movies. He rapid fire banter and everything, but like fully being like immersed in like a full body
Right.
performance.
Hmm.
I don't know. I love it. It's like I watched a lot as a kid, and I haven't watched it in probably a couple of years, probably since before the pandemic. But it always sticks with me, and it's not a great movie, but I love it. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It is a deeply weird movie.
Yes, yes.
A long time ago with my dad on TV, like on one of the movie channels, and I just remember being I haven't seen it since, but I just
Hmm.
remember just being so transfixed. I'm like, wow, this is like the cartoon come to life.
Oh yeah,
If you want to
bulbous
see,
arms and everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
if you want to see a really funny Robin Williams stand-up bit, he ends one of his stand-up specials with what if old school like Hollywood actors were in porno movies, and then he transitioned to like talking about like his movies being turned to pornos, and then he reenacts like like a porn version of Popeyes. It's
Oh
really
my God. I remember when I first saw it, I think I used to do like the message boards on IMDb a lot.
Hmm.
And of course, they don't exist anymore. But I think
Right.
I posted a little review of it on there, and I think I called it something like a towering monument to the power of drugs. Because that's what that movie is like. It is like
Oh yeah.
everybody was just super on drugs,
Yep.
and they probably were.
Oh yeah. And Robert Altman didn't make a movie for like a decade after this. Like this was like either completely traumatized by it or was just like, I can't do any better than Popeye. I like to think of it that way.
Yeah. All right, you guys ready for my number one?
Okay.
Yes.
All right, I gotta do an impression of his
Okay.
character for this one. 50,000 years in the lab, we get you stuck a crick in the neck. It's Aladdin, man. It's Aladdin.
Mm.
Like this is Robin Williams at his most zaniest, at his most funny.
Oh yeah.
Just the fact that I was laughing at his celebrity impressions, but as a kid and I didn't know what they were, just
Mhm.
telling
Right.
it's just Robin Williams doing a funny voice.
It's a perfect mixture of animation and voice.
Mm,
Like the possibilities of his voice and the possibilities of animation, like go
yeah.
hand in hand with it. It's a wonderful. It almost feels separate from the movie in some ways. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. Like it transcends whatever the trappings of Aladdin are. It's great.
Yeah. And you have
His
like
performance in it is great.
and you have Eric Goldstein, like legendary Disney animator, doing this, and that has to be the most like exciting but daunting like animation task of all time.
Sure.
The fact that you get to animate a character voiced by Robin freaking Williams, and then you have to do a character for each one of his voices.
Right.
Because like when he does like Dangerfield, like he turns into Dangerfield. When he does Peter Lorre, he looks like Peter Lorre. You know, when he does Arnold Schwarzenegger, he looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And they're like hours upon hours of like outtakes. And we get maybe like 5 minutes worth on the Aladdin Platinum Blu-ray. And that's just funny as some of this stuff. Like he does like Stallone, which I really appreciate it because I'm a big Rocky fan. He does Michael Jackson. He does like Obi-Wan Kenobi. As one of
Wow.
it's just so funny.
And then the thing about this movie though is that Disney learned all the wrong lessons from it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because then they get into this period in the like mid to late 90s where they have to have like all these pop culture references. You know, get stuff like Hercules, which I kind of like, and then you get like the Emperor's New Groove, which I don't like at all. But they're just trying to capture that like zany Robin Williams energy, but they don't have Robin Williams to do it. They kind of led Disney down the wrong path because it was so
for like
successful.
a decade. Yeah.
The interesting video about celebrity voice casting and how when it works and when it doesn't work. And the person was saying it works here because the original conceit of the character was Robin Williams.
Yeah.
That type of character that does all these voices. And that's who they want. That was their number one pick. And it was like, we'll never get him. Yeah, probably too busy, but they got him.
And then they screwed him over.
Oh yeah. You might
all the like contractual stuff. Yeah.
Oh no.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. Do you not know about this?
I don't know about this.
So I mean, so I call it Jackson.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So apparently, in his contract, he was only allowed. They were only allowed to use his character and his name like a certain amount of in the advertising, or it was don't tell people that he's in the movie at all, or something like that. Yeah. But of course, Disney being Disney, advertised the crap out of this movie for this movie, and so for the Aladdin sequel, Return of Jafar, and the TV show, they got Dan Castellaneta, the voice of Humphrey for that reason.
Yeah, and
then around the time of Aladdin 3. Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was, I believe, was the perpetrator of him screwing him over. To do DreamWorks for Spielberg and
David Geffen.
Yeah, the new guy that was the head of the animation studio, or had a bigger part in Disney. And he basically said, "So I'm sorry to Robin Williams, and do you want to do your Aladdin 3?" And they did Aladdin 3, which was funny because I remember seeing advertisements of him in the recording lines for Aladdin 3. So that's kind of fun. It worked out.
Huh. I never saw Aladdin 3. I honestly didn't know he did any of the voices after the first one. I knew he wasn't in the sequel.
I thought it was okay. I think he's still real funny in Aladdin 3 because Robin Williams. My problem was I feel like the comedy fit better in the first one, like within kind of into the plot, and it made more sense for the movie. I felt like in 3, it felt like the story would go on, and then it would cut for a second, so Robin Williams could do a funny bit.
Yeah,
and that's not necessarily his fault. It's probably his editing or what the way it was written or something like that. But it was just weird. I felt like it didn't fit in the story.
Right.
But anyways, guys, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
No. Other than I loved all your picks too. Those are all my honorable mentions as well. Like it was like I made up a whole list, and then like everything that didn't make it was basically everything y'all said that was on.
Yeah, he made a lot of really good movies. So
Yeah,
yeah, he made some stinkers too.
of course we all do. I mean,
but even that, here's the thing: even some of his movies that are like bad, I kind of like them. Like I kind of like Patch Adams. I kind of like, I kind of like Jack.
okay, that's a choice.
It's
Okay,
weird. It's a super weird
that's
movie,
true.
but I enjoy watching it, and I think he's really good in it.
Agreed.
So
I mean, even things like, did you ever see Jacob the Liar? It was from like the early 2000s. It was like a
I think I
Holocaust
saw that, but
movie.
I don't remember anything about it.
He's really good at it.
Right.
The movie itself is not great, but
Yeah,
he's really good in it, and that's usually what a good um, an actor or performer or versatile comedian can do for a role, any role.
yeah,
It's like elevate it, make it better, and I think he can do that. I think he did that in almost everything.
yeah.
All right, cool, man. So I guess we'll wrap this episode up. Because if you like this episode and you want to see more spooky and weird content, make sure you slap that subscribe button and follow me on Facebook and Twitter at Horror Sci-Fi and Beyond. Also, don't forget to leave this episode a killer comment and get this episode a King Kong sized thumbs up. This has been Drew from Horror Sci-Fi and Beyond. Over and out. Bye.